Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in a calm, resourceful feeling of relaxation. And as you exhale, allow your eyelids to completely relax and feel good with your eyes closed, listening to the sound of my voice. As you breathe in and breathe out, just get a sense that any tension, stress, anxiety, or worries is leaving your body in your outward breath, enabling you to go deeper and deeper, relaxed. And as your body relaxes, I want you to use the power of your imagination to imagine a beach with wet sand. Perhaps the tide has just come out of that beach and it has that smooth sand. I want you to imagine that you're perhaps with a hand, your feet, or even a stick, drawing a large circle in the sand. And I want you to place yourself in the middle of that circle. Feel the warmth of the sun on your skin. See the gentle breaking of the waves. And I want you to get a sense that you feel safe and free in the circle. I want you to imagine walking to the edge of that circle and place one foot over the boundary of that circle. And I want you to get a sense of feeling uneasy, unsettled, that it doesn't feel right. And then I want you to expand this circle so the circle is very large. So large, in fact, that you can do so much within the circle. And I want you to get a sense that if you can do so much in this very large circle, why would you want to go outside of that circle? I want you to get a sense that you have unlimited freedom, unlimited options and choices within the circle. And I want you to imagine that society is inside that circle. And then I want you to imagine that there are certain things outside of the circle, things perhaps that you don't want to do, but also that society wouldn't want you to do either. And perhaps you think of these as things like crimes. There are some people that would go beyond the boundary and do things that are not in the interest of society, and sometimes there's consequences. So there might be a circle that represents the boundaries of criminality. What's in the circle is legal and what's outside of the circle is illegal. And then I want you to get a sense that there are things that are socially acceptable, and there are things that are socially unacceptable. And in this very large circle on the beach, everything in the circle are things that it's totally fine for you to do. But for example, you probably wouldn't get drunk and naked at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday and run through the streets. And even if it wasn't illegal, it would be socially unacceptable. And I want you to get a sense that most of what is out of the circle, you have no interest in doing anyway. If your unconscious mind agrees that this circle represents a healthy, useful boundary? Let me know by nodding your head. And most of these things don't need to be explained. Most crimes, you don't need to know why they're bad. You just accept that they are. And you have no interest in doing those things anyway. I want you to get a sense that when a whole society agrees on what the boundaries are, the society can work more efficiently. There's less conflict. And then I want you to imagine that in certain circumstances, like a war, like a riot, suddenly the boundaries become confused. And I want you to get a sense that when boundaries are unclear, it's a recipe for chaos. Chaos, stress, and people feeling upset or hurt. I want you to get a sense that this circle can also apply to your own home and your own family. I want you to get a sense that what if this boundary that represents what's okay and what isn't okay could be an opportunity for more trust, better communication, more confidence, and more feelings of autonomy. But I wonder how you would feel if you lived in a society where you didn't know what was a crime and what wasn't a crime until you were arrested and thrown in jail. You might deem that to be unfair. And therefore, isn't it safe to say that what's essential for a boundary is clarity as to what that boundary is? And as you entertain the idea of the importance of boundaries, I wonder, what would be the most important boundaries within your home? What is okay within the circle, and what is not okay outside of the circle? If you were giving out consequences but didn't let people know where the line was, that would be unfair. And I want you to get a sense that you need to know yourself what the boundaries are before you can accept anyone else to respect those boundaries. I want you to create a picture of your own home in your mind's eye and think back to those times that you've been upset, stressed, or hurt. And it's likely that things happened in those moments that were beyond the realm of that boundary. And then there's times where you got on really well with members of your own family, and it's likely that that was inside the circle. There are clues to what the boundary is because of how you feel emotionally, but also what causes conflict. And a big source of conflict is that the shape of your circle is a different shape to someone else's circle. What you deem as unacceptable, someone else thinks is completely okay. And I want you to get a sense that to avoid conflicts, to avoid stress and upset, it's useful if all the people living in the same home agree on the same shape and size of that circle. And if that made sense, let me know by nodding your head. want you to get a sense that anything that you tolerate, expect more of. If you tolerate people going beyond the border of this circle, then effectively there is no border of that circle. And consequences doesn't have to be punishments and discipline. Punishments are always a last resort. I want you to get a sense that the best way to enforce a boundary is to have conversations about the boundaries. What's okay and what isn't okay. Because when everyone in the same home agrees on the same boundaries, rarely will people want to step beyond those boundaries. I want you to think of something that is absolutely not okay in your home. Maybe it's a sign of disrespect or physical violence, something clearly outside of the circle. And I want you to think about how you would handle someone doing that thing if you were at your most resourceful, just as resourceful as you are in different areas of your life, in your work, in your friendship group. I want you to get a sense that you're feeling confident, resourceful, and then you witness something clearly outside of that circle. I want you to imagine what you would do to communicate that boundary so that more of what happens in the future is inside the circle and not outside of the circle. And once you have an idea of what you would do in a confident, resourceful, caring way, let me know by nodding your head. I want to plant a seed of an idea. And that idea is that not enforcing a boundary is not love, it's weakness. And communicating and enforcing a boundary is an expression of love. Because when people know where they stand, stress goes down. When people know where they stand, anxiety goes down. There is always infinite freedom and expression from within a circle. So the more you communicate the boundaries of your circle, the more the people you love the most will respect those boundaries. But only if you listen as much as communicate. In a home, it's just not your boundary. It's everyone's boundary. How can you expect to make it not okay if someone steps outside of your circle, if it's okay for you to step outside of someone else's circle? And I want you to get a sense that this requires conversations, communication, and listening as much as talking. And if you have that willingness to listen to what's important to other people as much as communicate what's important to you, then let me know by nodding your head. For it to work, it's a two-way street. There was laws that used to exist that don't exist anymore because the people inside the circle disagreed with the people that were drawing the lines. You don't want your circles to be so small that people feel restricted, or so open that people feel lost. And therefore, balance is essential. Fairness is essential. I want you to unlock that feeling of inner strength that if you need to implement a consequence for stepping beyond the circle many, many times, that you will know what options are available to you, but you will also have the inner strength to do what's required. And when you feel that inner strength, you feel that ability to communicate and issue a consequence if necessary, so that there are less future occasions outside of your circle. Let me know by nodding your head. And sometimes the most important love is tough love. I want you to think of children that exist in the world that had no parents, no one to let them know what's okay and what's not okay. There were no boundaries for those children. There was no one to let them know what isn't okay. And therefore, some of those children went down a path of poor decisions that led to big consequences, simply because there was an absence of someone willing to give tough love. Love that is in the interests of that individual, that would avoid future negative consequences. And just as there is thousands upon thousands of children in the world that had no boundaries whatsoever, in some cases the boundaries were there but just never enforced. And I want you to perhaps make a picture of someone you knew from your childhood that was what you consider spoiled. They could do no wrong. There were no consequences to their actions. They could be rude or disrespectful, hurtful, spiteful, and there was never consequences. And that isn't good either. And therefore, you are unlocking your ability to be firm yet fair, to be loving but strong, to offer guidance but the support necessary, and to communicate the lines in your circle before anyone steps over them. I want you to go forward in time and imagine that there has been a whole year of you communicating, having conversations about boundaries and enforcing them, using tough love when necessary. And I want you to see how it changes the dynamic in your home. Perhaps there's a home with more respect, mutual respect back and forth, less arguments, less stress. And if you get a sense that this future is helpful for everyone, let me know by nodding your head. I want you to get a sense that all the resources necessary are unlocked, but there is a difference between resourcefulness and implementation. You have the knowledge, you have the will, but a boundary is only a boundary if it's consistent. And I want you to imagine that in the days and weeks that lead up to that year, you will see yourself being consistent and fair, and giving reasons for any decisions or choices that you make. And I want you to see that people are reasonable when you give them valid reasons. I want the part responsible for implementing this change in your life and in your home to unlock all the resources necessary, but also to preempt any problem that can get in the way. And just to realize that every problem and every setback on this journey is an opportunity to learn and to get stronger. And if that part is willing to accept this difficult but necessary challenge, let me know by nodding your head. I want you to see yourself back there in that circle on that beach. But imagine a year has gone by and that circle is no longer a line in the sand, but crystals. Crystals creating a giant border around your giant circle on this beach. And notice that over time, the lines don't even need to be communicated because everyone knows where they are. But this time I want you to see yourself and the people you love the most on that beach in the same circle, smiling happy faces with a spirit of collaboration and connection, as you realize that these boundaries were not an impediment to love, but a catalyst for even more. And if you accept that to be true, let me know by nodding your head. And then find yourself no longer on the beach, but back in your body, listening to my voice firmly in the present, with all parts returning firmly to the present and all sensations returning to your arms, your legs, your fingers and toes. Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Just wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, get a sense that you're in your own physical body right now as I very shortly count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. You will awaken feeling resourceful, strong, firm but fair, willing to do what's necessary to have that tough love and clear boundaries necessary for you and for everyone else. Starting to count to awaken you. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.